Okay, so I'm just going to spoil it. I'm going to tell you everything I'm going to tell you in 30 seconds, and then I'm going to tell it to you in like 40 minutes. So, dramatic opening that's a little bit dark, but don't worry, it's just from a movie. Some academic-y, researchy kind of stuff from smart people, and then how God's truth has already taught us that. And then at the end, I'm going to try to tell you why I think it's a really big deal and why it matters to the church. So let's start with the dramatic opening. So it's literally a moment of life or death. And a solitary man peers into a void, and it's the dark of night, and he takes his place on a snowy bridge, and he's completely alone other than the weight of his regrets and possibly some anger. And now he is ready to take his own life. Now, this particular man is not a likely candidate for such a thing. He doesn't have any of the obvious vices. He's not a chronic drinker. He's not a gambler. His marriage appears strong. His family is beautiful. He has meaningful work that sometimes he kind of resents, but mostly he seems to like. And so we're stunned to find this man on this place, and yet here he is perched, hanging between life and death, turning over his thoughts, and they are continually pointing him towards taking his own life in the icy water just below. Now, what I've just described is a pinnacle moment and is actually the opening of It's a Wonderful Life. Yep, she knew it. It's George Bailey that's standing there. Every man, Jimmy Stewart, is the one who is standing there. And I hope you've seen that movie, and I hope you love it as much as I do. And I like this movie because, like George, I've been on that bridge. Now, I haven't literally been on that bridge, but I have felt regret about things that I've done and things that I have not done. And you've probably been there too. And the question George is asking is, does my life matter? And if you've seen the movie, you know that Clarence, not exactly an angel because he doesn't have his wings yet, he shows up and he gives George a supernatural, beautiful gift. He shows George what his life would have been like if he had never lived. And ultimately, he proves to George that, yes, your life matters. And so this theme is explored in a couple of ways. One way is just George's good deeds. He saves 2 lives before he's old enough to vote. There's the pharmacist who is bereaved, and he mixes the medicine wrong, and it would have killed a person, and young George Bailey, he's plucky, and he goes in there, and he tells him, no, you can't do this, and then the kid that's on the snow ramp and falls into the pond, and George jumps in and saves the guy, and then that's why he's deaf in one ear, and then that guy that he saved goes on to save an entire ship of soldiers. And so we see that these good deeds that George does has an impact upon the world. But maybe even more powerfully than saving lives is the relationships and the community that George builds. And that's what I really want to talk about is our relationships and how sometimes they're like air. We take them for granted until we don't have them, and then we're gasping for life. And I come to you from Hobbs, New Mexico, and we were shut down. I mean, this is one way that we have Texas licked. I know that Texas thinks they're bigger and better at everything, but we have you be in shutdown restrictions. New Mexico was on lockdown. I would drive just across the border to Texas, and I would see people at like restaurants, and they were eating with their families, and they looked happy, and like it would make me feel weird. I'm like, Jamie, there's people in there. They're happy. We weren't allowed to do that. Now, New Mexico might have had a little worse than you guys as far as the shutdown goes, but all of us felt this gasping for air of being isolated from people. And I want to argue to you today that it's just not our quality of life that is impacted by our connection to others, but it is actually a matter of life or death. Don't believe me? Way back in 1248, there was a German king, and he was King Frederick II. And I don't know how warped King Frederick I was, but his son said, okay, I know that everything German is the most natural God-given thing, and so to prove it, he sends some men out to some peasants, and he actually abducts their infants. And he orders that they be raised in total isolation to prove that they would grow up and speak the German language, right? This was his thing. Guess what language they spoke? They didn't, because after isolation, they died. And believe it or not, throughout history, this has been tried more than once, and the most common outcome was death. When we're deprived of connection, we literally die. And so our relationships are not a matter of just your quality of life. That's why I say it literally can be a matter of life or death. And so I should have brought a prop. I'm not a big prop guy, but imagine a funnel, okay? And everybody knows that the big end of the funnel goes up and the small end goes down. And so if you can picture this funnel in your mind, this funnel, I want to represent the relationships that are currently active in your life. And so at the very widest end, I guess if we wanted to be absurd, we could say that there's 7 billion people at that end of the funnel. But you couldn't possibly know the 7 billion people that currently live on planet Earth. Your mind couldn't keep up with that. So what about the 300 plus million that live in our country? You might like the same music as they do. You might know some of the same people as they do. You speak the same language as most of them. But can you really know 300 million people? Of course not. What about the 6,000 some odd people that live right here, Monahans, Texas? You couldn't know them all. And so my question to you is, how many people do most people socially know? Would anybody care to guess? I teach teenagers, so feel free to interact with me. 2 to 12, too small. Believe it or not, this number is actually pretty stable across time and cultures. It's 150 people. Is more or less the average number that people can socially know. And when they look back across time and culture, a lot of tribes top out at 150 people, indigenous hunting tribes, and then when they get bigger than that, they split off and they form a second tribe because they can't keep up with each other. Fighting forces, they found that the most amount of men that you can kind of control in one group is around 150. I've got a youth group kid who I think his platoon, the terminology is probably off, is 60, and then there's 2 of them, which makes 120. And so across time and cultures, this number keeps showing up. That's kind of the average number that most people can socially know. And for decades, a lot of smart people sat around and wondered why. Why is it 150? And I'll put it this way. A lot of people thought that it was kind of like a software issue with the brain, that maybe the software that our brain ran only had like 150 slots or so. But in the 90s, there was a researcher by the name of Robin Dunbar, and he got to measuring the size of the neocortex of the brain compared to the size of the rest of the brain, and came up with a ratio. And he did this for primates, for humans, chimps, orangutans, monkeys, all of that stuff. And when he did his formula, and it's not that difficult, he could calculate the size of groups that in nature that primates could gather in. And his number was stunningly accurate. For people, it was 150, and this number was stable across time and cultures, and so he did it for all kinds of primates. And when they would go and look at apes or chimps or orangutans, he was stunningly accurate. And so what they discovered is, it's not a matter of the software that we run, it's a matter of the hardware that we run. It's literally the size of our brain limits how many people that we can socially know. Now, Robin Dunbar and a lot of researchers believe that we evolved this way. I believe that God made us this way, to where we can only socially know around 150 people. And so this funnel that you've all pictured in your brain, at the very widest end, that first part, I want you to picture around 150 people there. Now, there's not a lot of young folks in the room now because they went to go to their Bible class, but some of them, if they were here, they might be saying, Lance, no, you don't even know. I have 3 times that many on my Facebook page. And what I would say is, you're right. I have youth group kids that have far more than that. But when you use technology to kind of hack that, to make that number bigger, so let's say that you double it, you weaken the bonds across all 150, and they're only half as strong. And so you don't know them as well, and it's not because you don't care, and it's not because you're not friendly, it's because you literally are limited by the size of the neocortex of your brain compared to the rest of your brain. And so let's talk about Jesus. Now, I don't know about you, but it is easy for me to conjure up the idea that it's Jesus and his 12 friends, and they're kind of dolts, but they're the ones that really kind of ran this kind of Jesus movement that we read about in the Gospels. And so we get our kids to try to learn the names of these 12 friends, and then we read about them and say, look at how they didn't understand what Jesus is trying to teach them. And we just have this picture of Jesus plus 12, and that's the movement. But it doesn't hold up to Scripture. Jesus lived and moved in a community that was much larger than the 12, but was smaller than all of Palestine. And so in Luke Chapter 10, it says that Jesus appointed the 72 and sent them out 2 by 2. Well, I don't know about you, but 72 is way more than 12. So even if you count the 12 as part of the 72, there's still 60 more people that are part of this group. And if he had sent the entire group, it would have just said that he sent them all. It said that he appointed 72. And then we also know that there were some women in that group that were paying for the ministry. So they probably weren't a part of that 72. And so I tried to find the number, and I read some really old sources. There's some people who think that the Jesus movement might have been as big as 450 people, but that number definitely changed over time. But there's a big group of people that were following Jesus, and then maybe they had to go back to their day job, or maybe Jesus said a teaching that was really hard for them, and they left, and we know that happened because it's in the Gospels. And so I don't know how big the Jesus movement was, but I do know this, and this is what I want to focus on. Jesus is crucified, he's resurrected, he ascends, and a command is given to go back to Jerusalem and to wait. And the book of Acts opens with how many believers? Anybody know? It's not 12. It's 12 times 10. It's 120. There is a community of people that is waiting on what's going to happen when the church launches. We give Peter all the credit. Peter got up and he preached the gospel, and he's wailing away, and then they stop him and say, what do we do? And because we're all good Church of Christ people here, we know exactly what Peter told them to do, to repent and what? And be baptized. You guys are not as big into the Church of Christ as how I grew up, all right? We all know this. And we're like, Peter, the Holy Spirit, yeah, and then the other 11 were there too, right? It wasn't just Peter. It wasn't just Peter plus 11. There is a community of people there, and it's 120 people. They were big enough to do something big, but they were small enough to know each other. And that's kind of what I want to camp out on here, is that when you're big enough to do something big, but you're small enough to know one another, big important things take place. And so in Malcolm Gladwell's book, it's called Tipping Point, he writes about the major benefits of communities of this big. And the technical phrase is transactive memory. And so is there anybody here who's good at working on cars? You guys don't have anybody? You good at working on cars? Is there a carpenter here? Is there a fisherman here? Can anybody do anything here? Are you a fisherman? Okay. You're a fisherman. Okay, I can't fish a lick. all right? But if I wanted to take my son fishing and I needed to borrow some gear or have somebody give me some pointers, okay, I might not be your best friend, but if I know you a little bit and I know you're good at fishing, what's your name? Dale, okay. I know that Dale is my guy to go to for fishing, all right? And when I get back, I can tell him like, hey, that lure that you gave me, it really worked. And then Dale goes, oh, okay. And then if somebody else comes to Dale, he'd be like, you know, Lance told me, and he's a beginner, that this lure is the one that really worked, all right? And pretty soon, Dale gets a reputation for helping the brotherhood when they want to go fishing. And then Dale starts thinking, well, this is kind of an important thing. This is kind of a ministry. And Dale starts getting really good at helping people learn to fish. Now, Dale, I don't want to stereotype you, but maybe you're not that good at working your phone. Is that possible? That like you have a hard time with working your phone, your cell phone? Okay, I'm pretty good at that. So if Dale starts struggling with his cell phone, I hope that he would think, you know, I helped that minister go fishing, and now my phone is frustrating me. Maybe he would help me out with my phone. And then he comes to me, and then I help him with his phone. And then pretty soon, he's telling the whole brotherhood, Lance will help you with your phone. And then I get really good at helping people with their phone. And what happens is, I start investing in Dale, helping him with his phone. And before long, I'm like, oh, you know, are you trying to get a hold of somebody? Well, yeah, my grandson is sick. Oh, can I pray with you about that? All right, I start giving to him as he's given to me. And then really special things start to happen when the church does that, because then I don't have to know how to pick a lure. He doesn't have to know how to fix his phone. And so that practical thing is taken care of. But then God can use that. And so in Romans 12, Paul is going to describe this. He says, for just as each of us has one body with many members, and these members do not all have the same function. I don't know how to fish. He doesn't know how to fix his phone. So in Christ, we, though many, form one body, and each member belongs to all the others. Dale's giftedness in fishing is not his to hold on to. It's his to provide grace in my life. Verse 6, he says, we have different gifts, each according to the grace that is given to each of us. And so God can use a community like that gives and invests in one another to pull off something big. Because have you thought about what happened in the days and weeks that followed when 3,000 people hear the gospel and they repent and they're baptized? What needs to happen? They need to be discipled. Well, the disciples are there, but who's going to feed them? Who's going to house them? Who's going to watch their kids? Who's going to help them out? It's that 120 people that are there, that are part of the community, that are willing to give their gifts to one another. Again, God knew that he needed a community and not just a couple of superstar preachers. So, here's what I see in my youth group kids. And some of this is from some research done by a gentleman by the name of Andrew Zersky. Is when I grew up, I pretty much had a community. I went to high school in a small town. It's Booker, Texas. I had like 25 kids in my class. Okay? And the same people that I played football with were more or less the same people I played basketball with, that I ran track with. And the same people I went to school with. All right? Everybody pretty much well knew everybody that I knew. And if I had a problem or was going through a hard time, everybody knew it. Everybody at least had a chance to minister to me. And our churches were largely that way. You may sit here and you sit here, but you basically know the same group of people. That's not the world our young people are growing up in. All right, our young people now are playing travel ball, and some of them are driving from Hobbs to Carlsbad to be on a team, and after they get there, there's somebody who drove from Roswell to get there, and they may be friends, but they don't know any of the same people, okay? And extrapolate that out across band and other travel sports and church camp and youth group, and nobody has the same 120 people that everybody knows. You and I may only know 4 or 5 of the same group of people. And he calls this a network versus a village. And so kids now have to manage multiple little tiny networks because there's never that one village that's always there for them. And so there's individual people that are there. But imagine if Peter was trying to call upon his personal network of 3 or 4 people here and 4 or 5 here and 5 or 6 here to get them to pull together to disciple and to help lead these 3,000 converts. He couldn't do it. And so our kids are missing out on this village. And church, I'm trying to tell you, I'm exhorting you, invest in your young people. Okay, let them know they have a village. Even if they don't show up at 3rd and Dwight, go and watch youth basketball games. Show up, get to know people. They need to know that they have a village because this is being lost. So in Acts 1, God had a community. And these 120 people were such a big deal because they're there at the launch of a movement that is literally going to change the world. So that's the top of the funnel. That's a really big part. And picture, instead of a funnel that's nice and smooth, it's one that's sharp. So we have 120, 150 here, and then it comes in really sharp. And in this next one, and I'm not making this up, this is in the research, guess what the next important number is? It's 12. And I'm not making that up just to match that Jesus had 12. And so in the research, they call this a sympathy group. And what this is 12 people is generally believed to be the number of people in which we can truly emotionally invest in at any given time in life. These are the people that we would call our close friends and that we have regular contact with. This number cannot be stretched without weakening the bonds. Again, if you try to have 24 very best friends, you're only going to be half as close to them as if you had 12. If you go less than 12, okay, you don't, just because you have 6 doesn't mean that you're twice as close to them. 12 is the number of which you can manage emotional attachment with at any given point in time. And frankly, I think this is probably a gift. I don't know about you, but I don't want to be emotionally attached to 7 billion people because every second there's somebody that becomes a widow. Every second there's somebody that gets a diagnosis of cancer. Okay, I don't want to have to carry that emotional weight for 7 billion. I don't even think that I can truly carry it for 150 people. I don't think that I can do that. I know that just our small church in Hobbs, that sometimes the prayer list makes me anxious because I'm like, there is so much pain. And knowing this it doesn't give me a license to not care or even to care less. It explains why it is so hard to spread yourself so thin when everybody's life has so many ups and downs. And so at the top of the funnel is your community. The second one is what I call your core group. And I hope you see what I'm doing with the C's because this was really hard to do. And there's going to be a third C. And so those 12, those were people that Jesus knew. And he chose them with a purpose. In John 15, he's going to say, you did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you so that you might go and bear fruit. He knew them. He knew their gifts. He knew what they were capable of doing. In Luke 6, it says that Jesus spent the night praying to God, and the next day is when he gets up and chooses this core group. Do you choose your core group with that much care and prayer? Do you guard your heart in your circle like that? I preach to kids a lot about how they choose their friends, but adults need to be just as careful. When I was 19, I was a freshman at a small state school, and I had my dorm friends, and we played a ton of basketball. We'd break into the gym at night and play all night, and we played a ton of video games. But I knew, and there was nothing wrong with those guys at all, but I knew that they weren't my Christian friends that were going to transform me and shape me. And I remember the night that I stood there and I prayed to God, and I said, God, I know that I need deeper friendships than what I have in my life right now. I am getting nothing from anybody, and I'm not really giving anything to anybody. And then I started doing something crazy. I started making myself available to those types of friends by, actually going to church or by actually going to some of the campus ministries. And it literally changed my life. There was a campus Church of Christ Bible chair there that let me be an intern. And it literally changed my life. And those friends that I made in that season of life are still my very best friends. They met my deepest needs. And so I prayed to God, and I was intentional. And I think about how when Philip is called in John 1, he brings Nathanael to Jesus. And Jesus said, I saw you beneath the fig tree. You were a true Israelite with no deceit. Jesus knew he needed somebody like that. Jesus knew he needed somebody like James and John, the sons of thunder, people that were passionate. He knew he needed a logical tax man, just like Matthew, so that Matthew could reasonably and concisely lay the gospel out. He chose his core group, okay? That's what I teach my young people to do. Every time I have a group that goes off to college, my farewell speech is, go find the Christians. Go find those people and be transformed by them and love them. Again, in the Gospel of John, it talks about how on Jesus' most important nights in the garden, he's praying for his core group, for his friends. This is why I think small groups are such a big deal for churches to have. And so we've got 150 at the top. In the middle, we have 12. And then right near the bottom, our funnel gets down to 3. And again, the research says that the most people that you can truly feel what they feel, and they know almost everything about you, and you know almost everything about them, the most people that you can do that with is 1 to 3. Jesus had his 3. He had Peter, James, and John, and they were with him on the mountaintop when he was transformed into all of his glory. Peter, James, and John were nearest him when he prayed in the garden. I could even argue that John had a special place even amongst the 3. Peter's kind of the leader, but it seems like that John is literally nearest the heart of Jesus, that at that Last Supper, the supper that Jesus said, I've desired to eat this feast with you, that it's John that's leaned against the very chest of Jesus, and what that must have been like to have heard the heartbeat of God. And so you need this inner circle that literally knows what your heart sounds like. You need people, not a lot of people, but people that you trust, that know almost everything about you, and they still love you. You need people to tell you when you're wrong. You need people that when the Romans show up in the middle of the night, even if it's not the right thing to do in the moment, that they're willing to cut somebody. Okay? Because Peter took the knife out, and he's willing to cut somebody for Jesus. You need somebody who is that loyal for you. You need people in your life who will literally walk through fire with you and for you. And in the case of the book of Daniel, this was literal. There were 3 men that were thrown into the fire, but the king said, there's 3 that went in, but I see 4. And that 4th one looks like a son of the gods. All right? Because when 3 people stand together with Jesus, Jesus is there with them in the fire. Solomon says that a strand of 3 is not easily broken. You need a tight circle of Christians. David had his Jonathan. Paul had his Timothy, whom he calls his son in the faith. God uses these friendships for his glory. And so far, I've made it sound kind of preachy and really light and really joyful relationships and friendships. But you and I both know that the potential for pain is profound. And no one knows that better than Jesus. Jesus feeds the thousands, and yet there's many people who leave him. By the end of the chapter, there's just a couple of disciples left, and they say, Lord, we have nobody else to go to. His community didn't stand by him. What about his core group? They kept falling asleep the night that he was arrested, the most important night of his life. And even his his inner circle, his three, Peter only follows from a distance and denies him 3 times. John is the only one who appears to be present at the cross. This funnel is not always easy. Sometimes relationships have to be fought for. Sometimes we say the wrong thing, we forget your birthday, we invite someone else to dinner, we leave you at home alone. And Jesus models for us how to live when this occurs. And it's not just forgiveness. What we need to fight for and seek is restoration. And that doesn't come easy, but it's possible through sacrifice and grace. And finally, I chose a funnel to think about because a funnel is useless if it doesn't lead you somewhere. If that funnel doesn't go someplace that it is supposed to go, you might as well just pour it out on the ground. And so I believe that these funnels inherently, if done accurately, they lead us to God and His plans for our lives. I believe that if we separate ourselves from this funnel, that we are in spiritual danger of death. I believe that these funnels are a way for us to have a good life, but also to have a fruitful life for the kingdom. And so I want to leave you with some real super duper practical applications of why I think this is a big deal. And that's for churches. As churches are growing, church planners will tell you that going from 0 to 100 is not that hard. It's going from 200 to 400, 500 that's real hard. They top out just above that line of where we can all socially know one another. As churches shrink, which I hate to admit this, I've been at Taylor Street since 2007, and the arrow as far as seats that are taken in the pews is going the wrong direction. It's going down. A lot of churches kind of bottom out around 120, 150 people because a lot of times there's only 1 or 2 people they're really in there that are kind of spiritually shepherding, and that's the most amount of people that they can know at one time. And so the numbers a lot of times will kind of bottom out there. And so when you start trying to grow your church, or when you start trying to get the arrow to go the right direction, these are things you need to be thinking about. If you guys are what's the membership here or the attendance here before COVID? Anybody have any idea? You're supposed to have that on the wall. Come on. Okay, about 120, right? And so if you're going to grow above that, you have to start thinking, okay, what are we going to do to make a big church small? Because if we're going to grow and we're going to get bigger, one of your elders or Sean can't socially know everybody there. And those sheep need fed by somebody that actually knows them. And so it's really easy for leadership teams to bond together. And that's great, and that needs to happen. But if those bonds are not divided out amongst the sheep, guess what happens to those sheep that don't feel bonded to anybody there, particularly the leaders? You just kind of lose track of them. You're like, yeah, have they been here in the last month? Well, no, actually it's been 6 months, but nobody noticed. And so that's why I think this is so important, is I care desperately about our congregations. I care desperately about the future of the restoration movement. And relationships, I feel like, is what's going to be the difference. You know, I can get into somebody's face and I can preach them Acts 2:38, but if they're not connected to me or connected to somebody that's part of the church, it's real unlikely to stick. It is those relationships. It is investing in people. It is modeling what Jesus did. He had a community, he had a core, he had a circle. And so if we're going to model Jesus and if we're going to call ourselves the Church of Christ, we've got to do what Christ did. And then just kind of understanding how this works. So when I first got into ministry, I was like, I'm going to be so present for my students. I'm going to be praying with them and for them discipling them, teaching them, leading them. And I was young and energetic. And pretty soon I realized, well, some of my students don't really want to spend that much time around me. And when they do, they'd rather just kind of do the fun stuff. They don't want to read the Bible and pray. And I was like, well, but they need to. They should want this. And I thought that all 25 or 30 of my students when I first got into ministry, that like I should have like this close-knit thing with. And I was talking to an older minister, and he's like, you're going to burn yourself out. He said, you just need to feed the hungry. And I was like, you don't know me. I'm going to feed them all if they want it or not. And he was right. I burned myself out. Got out of ministry, stayed out for 2 or 3 years. I was trying to make myself accountable to have an inner circle of 25. I can't do it. And so if you're a leader, if you're a Christian who wants to be a leader, that wants to disciple, that wants to mentor, sometimes it's so overwhelming to think, well, there's 12 people that they really need me to do this. And you start thinking about them, and then you're like, it's too many, I can't do it. And Sean's probably had this thought. And some of your elders have probably had this thought. Guess what? You should disciple 25 or 30 people, but probably over the course of 25 or 30 years. I can tell you the number of people that I've truly poured into, and it's never more than 2 or 3 at a time. And it's just because that's who's available. It's who God sent me. I'm no less of a minister because I can't pour into 30 people. God didn't make it possible for me to have a brain to be able to do that. And so, in a way, it's kind of disheartening to say, well, you're kind of limited with how many people that you can reach. But it's also kind of freeing to say, okay, God, just show me my 1. Show me my 2. Show me who I can pour into, who can be part of a circle. Because our society is mobile. I have students that are, man, this is hard to say. I have students that I have their kids now showing up at church. I have students that are in their 30s. I have students that are married and have kids. And the highlight of my day, the highlight of my week, the highlight of my month is when they call me and when they tell me that they're still faithful. And they're telling me about their walk with God. And sometimes, guys, it's the knuckleheads. It's the ones that when they were in the youth group, I wanted to wring their necks. All right? But they grow up and they thank me. And I'm like, when I was ministering to you and pouring into you, I was wasting some of my energy thinking, well, I wish there were 20 people here instead of 10. I wish I had 3 people here instead of 1. But for that 1, man, it's life-changing. And then it's like the Wonderful Life thing, right? It's a spinoff of what they go and do and who they impact in life and what kind of husband and wife and parent and leader and employee that they grow up to be and the lives that they touch. And so I think knowing these things is a big deal. And my prayer, my hope is that you don't leave here and just forget this, but you start seeing this as like, okay, this is a community. I've got 120 people here. I can socially know everybody. It's not my job to know everybody's favorite color and their deepest hurt and what kind of childhood at home that they grew up in, but I should know something about everybody here so that I might have a chance to bless them and they might have a chance to bless me. I hope you start looking for your 12. People that you habitually call or text and check up on and make sure that they're doing good. I hope you have that group of 2 or 3 that they're pouring into you and you're pouring into them, whether you're the mentor or you're the mentee. And I hope that all of this is leading to something. I hope all of it is leading to the transformation that God makes possible for us all. So, questions, comments, rebuttals? Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, Sean asked me to close in prayer, so let's do that. Lord and God, you are so good, and we love you, and we thank you that we are fearfully and wonderfully made. Lord, you have made us to live in covenant with you, and you've made us to live in covenant with one another. And Lord, I just pray that we don't fall into the trap of cynicism, that we don't fall into the trap of apathy, that we don't fall into the trap of just busyness, to where we neglect the life-giving bonds that are available to us. Lord, if there's some restorations that need to take place of some friendships, Lord, I pray we go out of our way to do those. If there's some new bonds that need to be forged, I pray that we do that. If there is some investment that needs to be made in the lives of people, Lord, I pray we do that, because you've done that for us and you have modeled that for us. It's in the name of Christ that I pray. Amen.